Detective Nam Gun-wook is being interviewed by a news channel. He's currently investigating a serial murder case that started 6 months ago. During the interview, he takes the reporter to the area where previous incidents took place. While speaking to the reporter, he notices a man with a knife following a woman on the street. To protect the woman, Gun-wook pursues the attacker, with the cameraman trailing behind. In the attempt to apprehend the murderer, the detective is stabbed in the stomach and tragically loses his life. He was the son of the commissioner, Nam Gu-hyun. After his son's tragic death, Officer Gu-hyun is devastated. He counsels his grandson never to follow in his father's footsteps. Gun-wook had always expressed his desire to be like his father, but his aspirations led to his untimely demise. Officer Gu-hyun wishes to spare his grandson from a similar fate. Driven by an overwhelming desire to avenge his son's murder, Officer Gu-hyun seeks out assistance from another officer named Gu-tak. Gu-tak, who tragically lost his daughter to a serial killer's stabbing years ago, understands Gu-hyun's pain. Gu-hyun confides in an officer named Mi-young, revealing Gu-tak's reputation as a mad dog among the police force. Gu-tak is known for his aggressive tactics and tendency to use excessive force during interrogations. He disregarded authority, refusing to heed orders from superiors or cooperate with colleagues, especially when dealing with ruthless criminals. Because of him, a number of officers were caught taking bribes and had to resign in disgrace. After his daughter's death, Gu-tak's emotional instability rendered him unfit to lead investigations, resulting in his suspension from the force. As a friend of Officer Gu-hyun, Gu-tak agrees to revert to his mad dog persona to apprehend Gun-wook's murderer. However, he has certain conditions. He proposes forming a team of individuals like himself, recruiting 3 convicted criminals known for their serious offenses. One of them is Park Wong-chul, a former gang member who swiftly seized control of Seoul in just 25 days 2 years ago. Despite serving a 28-year prison sentence, he remains formidable, possessing the strength and power to subdue multiple opponents effortlessly. The next recruit is Young Tae-soo, a contract killer. Little is known about Young Tae-soo's past, including his motives for his crimes or how he carried them out. One day, he arrived at a police station with his victim's blood staining his shirt and surrendered himself. His string of murders earned him a 22-year sentence. The third and final member of the team is Lee Young-moon, a psychopath who had an IQ of 165 when he was 12. He holds the distinction of being the youngest person to earn a PhD in both philosophy and mathematics. Additionally, he holds the title of the youngest serial killer, having taken the lives of 15 people over 6 months. Remarkably, he left no fingerprints, shoe prints, or any trace of evidence at any crime scene, earning him the reputation of being a meticulous killer who leaves behind no clues. In the psychopath test, he scored 38 out of 40. Gu-tak explains to Mi-young that he requires Wong-chul's physical strength, Tae-soo's expertise, and Young-moon's intellect. He's convinced that with their combined abilities, they can apprehend anyone. Initially hesitant to release these dangerous criminals, Mi-young is persuaded when Officer Gu-hyun assures her that he will handle everything. At Gu-tak's request, Wong-chul and Tae-soo are escorted to an abandoned church that will serve as their hideout until the mission concludes. As hardened criminals, they immediately engage in an argument until Mi-young intervenes. She takes them inside and briefs them on the mission. Wong-chul scoffs at Mi-young's proposal, deeming it foolish, but Tae-soo suggests they listen to the details. This leads to a brawl between them, which is halted when Officer Gu-tak enters the church hall. Mocking the criminals, Gu-tak encourages them to continue fighting. When they turn to him for further clarification on their release, Gu-tak informs them that capturing the serial killer could reduce their prison sentences by 5 years. Upon hearing this, the criminals appear to become intrigued by the prospect of collaborating with the police. However, Wong-chul, accustomed to his gangster ways, struggles with the idea of being under someone else's authority. He seizes Gu-tak by the collar, but Gu-tak responds with a sharp glare and a stern warning. He advises Wong-chul to release his grip, cautioning that if provoked, a mad dog like himself will tear him apart. In the midst of the tense situation, Mi-young receives a distressing call regarding the escape of the third criminal, Lee Young-moon. A flashback reveals the events that transpired moments earlier. As officers escorted Young-moon to the church, he requested permission to use a public restroom. Once inside, he swiftly incapacitated an officer with a powerful knee strike to the face, then delivered a forceful blow to the head using a toilet tank lid. With his captors subdued, Young-moon freed himself and fled, boarding a train. As he gazed at a picture of his girlfriend, a sinister intent gleamed in his eyes. Meanwhile, Gu Tak, accompanied by his colleague Mi Young and the two convicts, is on their way to locate Young Moon. Gu Tak suspects that Young Moon will seek out his girlfriend, Eugene. Her testimony led to Young Moon's life sentence, and she could have been his last victim before his capture. To apprehend Young Moon, Gu Tak recruits Wong Chul and Tae Soo's assistants, offering to reduce their sentences by 4 years. However, the reward will go to the one who captures Young Moon first. To prevent the convicts from escaping, ankle monitors equipped with GPS are fitted on them to track their movements. With the ankle monitors in place, the duo sets out to find Eugene's whereabouts. They head to the club where Eugene used to work. Despite the guards' attempts to halt their progress, Wong Chul swiftly dispatches each one until he confronts the boss. Under pressure, the boss confesses that he sold Eugene to settle debts with loan sharks. Following the lead, they arrive at the loan shark's warehouse, where Tae Soo takes charge. Utilizing his remarkable combat skills, he fends off the thugs and forces the boss to reveal Eugene's location in Busan. Without delay, the team rushes to Busan to rescue Eugene and apprehend Young Moon. Meanwhile, Young Moon has already located his girlfriend. Mi Young reaches out to Eugene, alerting her to the situation. However, before she can fully convey the danger posed by Young Moon, Eugene unwittingly opens her door, only to find him standing before her. Upon entering the apartment, Young Moon confronts Eugene, demanding to know why she testified against him. Eugene asserts that he is a murderer who also attempted to kill her, prompting her decision to seek justice. Despite her accusations, Young Moon insists that he cannot recall anything, not even the deaths of 15 people he murdered. Eugene reveals that Young Moon has a history of memory loss. She believes that it all happened after he witnessed his parents' death. When she accuses him of murdering his own parents, Young Moon's rage spirals out of control. As he begins to choke Eugene, Gu Tak arrives outside the apartment and fires his gun at the lock, forcefully entering the room. Threatening Young Moon with his gun, Gu Tak attempts to subdue him, but the criminal refuses to back off. In the ensuing struggle, Gu Tak fires his weapon, prompting Young Moon to shield Eugene from harm. Consequently, Young Moon sustains a gunshot wound to his arm. Reacting swiftly, he flees the apartment through the window and steals a nearby car to escape. During the pursuit, Tae Soo intentionally crashes his vehicle into Young Moon's, causing a violent collision. With Young Moon left semi-conscious due to a head injury, Wong Chul arrives and delivers a decisive blow. Although Tae Soo halted Young Moon, it was Wong Chul who apprehended him, earning him the promised reduction of 4 years in his sentence as per the agreement. After Young Moon receives medical attention for his wounds and is brought to the church, Gu Tak engages him in conversation about the arrangement. Gu Tak urges Young Moon to attentively consider Mi Young's explanation of the mission before making a decision. Upon being briefed by Mi Young Moon opts to collaborate with Gu Tak in tackling the serial murder case. That evening, the team celebrates the commencement of their mission with drinks, pledging to apprehend the serial killer who preys on women. As the team dines, the killer is already in the midst of another murder. The modus operandi, location, and the rainy weather all point to the same perpetrator. Once the police conclude their initial investigation, the crazy dogs will be granted access to the crime scene. While passing through a residential area, Tae Soo seeks Mi Young's permission to visit Sun Young, a woman who once rescued him. Accompanied by a detective, Tae Soo knocks on the door, only to discover that Sun Young no longer resides there. Concerned for her well-being, Tae Soo takes matters into his own hands. He steals a car and drives straight to his mentor, whom he entrusted to care for Sun Young. However, his mentor reveals that he sends her money as instructed by Tae Soo, but is unaware of her current whereabouts. Frustrated, Tae Soo grabs his mentor by the collar, demanding he locate Sun Young and ensure her safety. As Tae Soo departs, he encounters Gu Tak, who delivers a punch to his face for attempting to flee. Later, the 3 criminals are dropped off in the crime-ridden neighborhood to hunt down the murderer. While Tae Soo and Young Moon conduct their investigations independently, Wong Chul adopts a different strategy. He storms into the office of a local thug, known for his knowledge of the area, and resorts to violence to compel his cooperation. After a day of searching, none of them have managed to locate the killer. Back at their hideout, Gu Tak instructs the criminals to share their findings. However, each of them is solely focused on being the first to capture the murderer, unwilling to share information. Tae Soo and Wong Chul explicitly state that they don't care about further casualties as long as their sentences are reduced. Unlike them, Young Moon shares the details of his investigation. He explains that the killer strikes when it rains because the scent of blood becomes more pronounced, driving him to commit murder and indulge in the aroma of blood. Young Moon admits that this recent murder and others before it were not his first attempts. He deduces that there are likely numerous hidden murders where the killer honed his hunting method, evidenced by the precision of the stab wounds. Therefore, they must search for cases with bloody crime scenes and poorly executed murders to uncover more information about the killer. Gu Tak agrees, believing that by discovering these hidden murders, they may gain valuable insights into the killer's identity. As a result, Gu Tak seeks assistance from his former colleague to obtain the murder case files containing the specific details mentioned by Young Moon. After acquiring the files, they discover numerous cases where the perpetrator struck during rainy weather. In each instance, the murderer gained entry through the front door and proceeded to beat the victims to death with a pipe wrench before fleeing the scene. Among all the crime scenes, there's a consistent pattern: blood splattered everywhere and victims with needle marks on their arms, indicating the killer drew blood from their lifeless bodies. However, 2 cases stand out where the victims survived. To glean more information about the murderer, Gu Tak resolves to interrogate the survivors. Accompanied by Tae-soo, they arrive at an apartment where one of the survivors turns out to be none other than Sun Young, Tae-soo's savior. Despite Tae-soo recognizing Sun Young, she doesn't seem to recognize him. When questioned about the day of the attack, Sun Young recalls how she and her daughter were asleep when the killer entered their apartment. Just as he was about to act, a water droplet fell on the little girl, stirring her awake. Startled by the sight of a man above her, she screamed, alerting her mother. While Sun Young grappled with the assailant, her daughter managed to flee the room and rouse other residents for help. Fearing capture, the killer was forced to flee without harming Sun Young. In contrast to Sun Young's story, another victim recounts her harrowing experience to Mi Young. Unlike Sun Young, she appears visibly shaken. That fateful night, she tragically lost her sister to the murderer's brutality. Paralyzed with fear as she witnessed her sister's demise, she was unable to move. After fatally attacking her sister, the killer approached her and whispered, "If I have to beat him, I have to kill a lot at once. That's why I chose your place so I can kill 2 people here." With those chilling words, he slashed the girl's face, but she miraculously survived. In the present day, once Gu Tak wraps up Sun Young's interview and exits the apartment, Tae-soo stays behind to inquire why the woman resides in such a rundown place. Sun Young feels offended by the questions. It becomes clear from her condition that she hasn't received any money from Tae-soo's boss, which he was supposed to deliver every month. Gu Tak overhears Tae-soo's conversation with Sun Young, leading him to suspect that Tae-soo might be familiar with the woman. That day, Wong Cheol conducts his own investigation with the local thug Chol-ju. When Gu Tak informs him that the perpetrator can pick locks without leaving marks, Wong Cheol immediately suspects the locksmith in the area. He approaches the man and starts asking about his job. Despite his frustration, the man continues answering questions until he unintentionally confesses to being the killer when asked by Wong Cheol. Since he had been answering yes to all of Wong Cheol's questions, he accidentally says yes to the next one. Upon hearing his confession, Wong Cheol drags him out of the shop and begins beating him until Gu Tak intervenes, strictly prohibiting him from harming innocent civilians. Back at the hideout, Mi Young updates the team on another serial killer who preyed on women during rainy nights. He was apprehended a year ago after his 23rd victim. When he was arrested, he told the police that he loved the smell of blood, which is strongest when it rains, so it is hard for him to resist the urge to kill someone. Since the new killer whispered to the girl about wanting to beat someone, Mi Young suspects it's the serial killer, aka Dong-soo, he intends to beat. If he aims to surpass Dong-soo as the top serial killer in the country, he'll need to kill 2 more people. Right then, Detective Kim arrives at the church with additional murder case files for the team to examine. When Mi Young opens the first file, she notices that the new serial killer is targeting survivors of his previous hidden murders. As the rain begins to fall, the team mobilizes to prevent the perpetrator from killing another victim. When Wong Cheol runs out of cigarettes, he steps into a shop to buy some. However, as he pays, he notices blood on his hand. He recalls his earlier encounter with a stranger upon entering the shop. Sensing something suspicious, he tails the man and alerts the others about his whereabouts. While searching for the killer, the assailant emerges from an alley and attempts to stab Wong Cheol. Yet, Wong Cheol manages to thwart the attack with his hand. He initially gains the upper hand by punching the killer, but then he is struck back as the killer retaliates, hitting him in the head with a wrench. Arriving home, the perpetrator cleans his clothes and opens the handle of the knife. revealing it to be a tube for collecting blood. He pours the blood into a vial and adds it to his collection of samples. The next day, Tae-soo arrives at the murder scene, and before unzipping the body bag, silently prays that it isn't Sun Young. Upon opening it, he's relieved to find it's someone else. On his way back, he spots Sun Young and her daughter outside the crime scene. Though relieved, he can't muster the courage to approach her. That night, Gu-tak receives a call from the forensic department, informing him that they found the perpetrator's fingerprints on the latest victim's body. Shockingly, the murderer turns out to be none other than Chul-ju, the local thug, although he vehemently denies the accusations. Observing Chul-ju's fear and anxiety under the media's attention, the crazy dogs realize he can't be the serial killer. Instead of displaying anger at his inability to surpass his rival, Chul-ju is visibly trembling with fear, indicating his innocence. As the rain begins, Tae-soo immediately sets out to find Sun Young, realizing her life is at risk if the real killer is still at large. Meanwhile, we witness the same locksmith approaching Sun Young as she makes her way home. He initially offers to assist with her groceries, but then he reveals his true identity when she declines his help. He's indeed the killer who targets women when it rains. Striking Sun Young in the head with a wrench, he prepares to stab her with his knife. However, before he can act further, Tae-soo arrives and violently subdues him. He wants to end the killer's life but is stopped by Gu-tak, who intervenes by shooting him in the arm. The police swiftly arrive and apprehend the killer. Officer Gu-hyun expresses gratitude to Gu-tak for apprehending the murderer of his son. Tae-soo confronts Gu-tak in the church, angrily strangling him and demanding explanations for using Sun Young as bait. It's revealed that Gu-tak never received a call from the forensic department regarding the killer's fingerprints. He intentionally arrested the local thug for provoking the real killer, knowing that the perpetrator would be enraged seeing someone else taking credit for his crimes. Gu-tak deliberately provoked the killer, inciting him to action, and then set a trap at the scene, using Sun Young as bait. Meanwhile, Young Moon interrogates the locksmith and discovers that he only killed 22 people. The total death count stands at 23, but the killer denies responsibility for one of the women. This revelation suggests there could be another murderer at large in the city. Before the team can delve deeper into this revelation, Detective Kim arrives with officers to escort the crazy dogs back to prison. Feeling betrayed, the criminals are dismayed, as Gu-tak sends them directly to jail without reducing their sentences. After a few days, Commissioner Gu-hyun reprimands his subordinate. A girl was killed in his precinct, and despite her calling the police for help before dying, assistance arrived 4 hours later. Realizing he needs the crazy dogs again to catch the killer, Gu-hyun calls Gu-tak and directs him to assemble the team. Gu-tak meets the criminals in prison. Despite their anger at Gu-tak for betraying them before, they reluctantly agree to assist him with another case, hoping he'll keep his word this time. The crazy dogs gather in the abandoned church, where Mi-young reveals that they will be members of the Seoul Police Special Crime Investigation Unit. Their task is to investigate and solve cases that frontline officers couldn't, for various reasons. Once they capture the perpetrator, they'll return to prison. However, if the police require their expertise for another case, they'll be released and put back into action. With each criminal caught, their sentences will be reduced, and once their sentence reaches 0, they'll be granted freedom as promised. Without delay, the team is escorted to the neighborhood where the murder occurred. Mi-young briefs the crazy dogs on what the police have discovered so far. The victim, So-young, was heading home after her shift when the perpetrator, Yang Shir-chul, grabbed her and rendered her unconscious. He managed to abduct her and confine her within 3 minutes, indicating he had been monitoring her movements near his residence. Additionally, his precision suggests this wasn't his first offense. Upon taking her to his home, he subjected her to severe beatings until she lost consciousness again. Subsequently, he dragged her to the bathroom, where he brutally murdered her and dismembered her body into over 300 pieces. Gu-tak and the crazy dog sense that something is amiss. If the murderer knew the girl had called the cops, he wouldn't have wasted time dismembering her body into 300 pieces. Gu-tak discloses that the forensic department informed him that the body found wasn't So-young, but another girl identified as Jane Doe. Moreover, the victim's organs are missing, indicating this is an organ trafficking scenario. While elaborating on this, Gu-tak notices marks on the floor, suggesting something was dragged. Investigating further, he discovers a hidden fridge filled with human body parts. This revelation confirms to the team that they're dealing with an organ trafficking case, and if the killer hadn't murdered So-young, she might still be alive. Before apprehending the criminal, the team prioritizes ensuring the safety of the abducted girl. Meanwhile, Churchill informs his client that the product is still fresh, indicating she's alive. Without wasting any time, the crazy dogs spring into action. Mi Young and Young Moon reviews CCTV footage of the street, uncovering something peculiar. A man observed So Young being abducted by Churchill, suggesting he may be the murderer's accomplice. On another front, Gu Tak encounters a corrupt prosecutor known for accepting bribes from criminal organizations. Taking advantage of the prosecutor's inebriated state, Gu Tak incapacitates him and extracts the location of the organ trafficking ring that bribed him. Meanwhile, Tae-so intervenes at a phone service shop, confronting and subduing the thugs before turning his attention to the shop owner. Presenting a burner phone recovered from the crime scene, Tae-soo presses the shop owner to divulge information about its user. Fearful for his life, the man provides Tae-soo with the location of a gang known for registering burner phones and engaging in human trafficking. Meanwhile, Wong Cheol once again enlists the help of the local thug, Chul-ju. Reluctantly, Chul-ju makes a call to an organ dealer, feigning interest in selling his kidney. Shortly after, a member of the organ trafficking ring meets Chul-ju on the street and escorts him to a location controlled by a gang. Before the thugs can proceed with their operation, Wong Cheol intervenes, ordering them to stop. A brawl ensues between them. Despite Wong Cheol's formidable strength, he struggles against the overwhelming number of thugs. Just as he's about to be overwhelmed, Gu Tak arrives, wielding a gas cylinder and a lighter. Threatening to ignite the place, he demands the owner disclose Churchill's whereabouts. Panicked, the thug divulges the address of the workshop where Churchill operates. Shortly after, all the crazy dogs gather at the location, each having found it through their own means. Meanwhile, as So Young continues to scream, Churchill strikes her in the head with a metal rod, rendering her unconscious. The crazy dogs burst into the workshop, swiftly incapacitating Churchill's accomplices. Wong Cheol seizes Churchill and unleashes a torrent of blows upon him with the same rod. Believing that the girl is dead, Gu Tak is overwhelmed with anger, particularly as the situation reminds him of his own daughter. He prepares to shoot Churchill, but just as he's about to, So Young emits a groan of pain, indicating she's still alive. Gu Tak breathes a sigh of relief and swiftly calls for an ambulance. The perpetrator is apprehended, and Gu Tak advises him to consider selling his uninjured eye once he's released from jail. After taunting the perpetrator, Gu Tak delivers a headbutt, injuring his other eye as well. After the criminal is taken away, Wong Cheol excuses himself to use the bathroom. Suddenly, a van pulls up nearby and snatches him away. Despite the police apprehending the suppliers, it's crucial to dismantle the entire organ trafficking organization. Otherwise, higher-ups will likely find new suppliers, and the operation will resume smoothly. To eradicate the organization once and for all, Gu Tak seeks permission from Commissioner Gu Hyun to take decisive action. On the other hand, abducted Wong Cheol finds himself in an under-construction building. He is stunned to discover that his own boss orchestrated his abduction. After a meeting with his boss, Wong Cheol is released. However, upon his return, he regards Young Moon with suspicion. This is because his boss has ordered him to kill Young Moon. When Gu Tak inquires about his whereabouts, Wong Cheol claims he got lost in the woods. Despite his ankle monitor indicating otherwise, he insists that they are all adults and have their own privacy. After conducting research, Gu Tak discovers that the head of the criminal organization is Madam Hwang Kyung-soon. 7 years ago, she entered the human trafficking trade and aggressively expanded her operations with low profit margins. Presently, no one can engage in human trafficking in Seoul without going through her. Mi Young interrogates one of the dealers about Madam Hwang's whereabouts, but he refuses to cooperate with a female officer. Tae-soo then steps in to conduct the interrogation his way. Initially polite, Tae-soo asks the dealer about Madam Hwang, but when he denies knowledge, Tae-soo stabs his hand with a pen. Despite the pain, the man remains steadfast. Tae-soo pierces another pen through his hand, yet the dealer still refuses to talk. Finally, as Tae-soo threatens to stab a third pen into his neck, the dealer agrees to cooperate. After obtaining the necessary information, the crazy dogs prepare to raid Madam Hwang's building. However, given her influence over numerous cops, they must proceed covertly. Only the team, Commissioner Gu Hyun, and Officer Cha of the SWAT team know about this operation. The building serves as a hub for all of Madam Hwang's illicit activities, with over 100 ring members practically residing there at all times. To minimize the risk of harm, Their primary objective is to gather evidence against Madame Huang for future arrest. Upon arrival at the building, the team adopts the guise of corrupt cops intending to take bribes from Madame Huang. One of Madame Huang's men escorts Gu Tak to her office while the rest of the team remains under surveillance. Tae-soo excuses himself to visit the bathroom, accompanied by a guard. Observing the suspicious behavior of the men surrounding them, Young-moon realizes they've been exposed. Suddenly, the thugs launch an attack on him and Wong Cheol, indicating that Madame Huang was aware of their raid. Upon hearing the gunfire, Tae-soo contacts Mi-young to alert her about the situation. However, before Mi-young can call for backup, Detective Kim strikes her with a pistol, rendering her unconscious. He then contacts Madame Huang and assures her that he has handled the situation. Meanwhile, Madame Huang sits in the security room and addresses her men via speaker. She orders them to eliminate the intruders. Meanwhile, the SWAT team arrives at the location, but Officer Cha turns out to be on Madame Huang's payroll. Upon learning of the promised reward, all the thugs prepare to hunt down and kill Gu Tak and his team. As Wong Cheol is being assaulted by the thugs, Young-moon arrives and intervenes, using a large scenery as a weapon to fend off the attackers. In the midst of trying to rescue Wong Cheol, Young-moon is stabbed in the back. After incapacitating their assailants, Wong Cheol transports Young-moon to the operation room, where they discover numerous bodies scattered about. He places Young-moon on the floor and ventures outside to seek assistance. Meanwhile, Officer Cha stumbles upon blood in the hallway outside the operating theater and realizes that the intruders are inside. Determined to eliminate them, he proceeds into the room. As Wong Cheol observes Officer Cha's approach, he recalls how his boss granted him 2 weeks to kill Young-moon. The contract, he reveals, was commissioned by an individual whose daughter was one of Young-moon's victims. If Wong Cheol doesn't manage to kill the serial killer, his boss will kill him. Despite knowing what might happen, Wong Cheol goes into the operation theater and starts fighting the corrupt SWAT team members. Later, he faces Officer Cha, who's holding a pistol. Just as Officer Cha is about to shoot, Tae-soo shows up and quickly disables the pistol. Once the SWAT team is taken care of, Gu Tak joins them, and they discuss their next plan. With all exits and entrances sealed, and communication networks like the internet and phones cut off, their only way out alive is to take Madame Huang hostage. Following Gu Tak's instructions, Tae-soo switches on the power to the VIP elevator, enabling Gu Tak, Wong Cheol, and Young-moon to enter Madame Huang's office directly. While Detective Kim takes Mi-young to the forest to bury her alive, she manages to free herself and knock the detective unconscious. Then, she calls Commissioner Gu Hyun for backup. Meanwhile, Gu Tak has taken Madame Huang hostage, causing the thugs to step back. However, to everyone's surprise, Madame Huang speaks up and offers her men a deal. She says she's not scared of dying, and adds that whoever kills the intruders will become the next boss of the organization. Hearing this, all the men in the building attack Gu Tak and the crazy dogs simultaneously. Even though the crazy dogs are outnumbered, they fight fiercely, but in the end, each of them gets injured, showing they won't make it out of the building alive. Just as things look grim, backup arrives. They storm the building, holding the thugs at gunpoint, forcing them to release Gu Tak and his men. Gu Tak feels a wave of relief, as they had resigned themselves to death. Madame Huang is arrested, and the organ trafficking organization is finally dismantled for good. Following the successful completion of the mission, Gu Tak and the crazy dogs tackle many other cases together. One day, Tae-soo encounters Sun Young during one of his frequent hospital visits. During their conversation, Sun Young reveals her desire to meet her husband's murderer, which the police prevented. She expresses her wish to ask why he killed her husband, who wasn't involved in any criminal activities. Feeling uneasy, Tae-soo asks if she could forgive the murderer if he truly regrets his actions. Sun Young firmly states that murder isn't a mistake but a crime, and such crimes can't be forgiven. As Tae-soo reflects on his actions, it's revealed that he is the one who killed Sun Young's husband. Back at the church, Young-moon shares with Gu Tak the details of his investigation into a new case. According to his findings, the killer used a double-barrel shotgun in a mass shooting that claimed the lives of 6 people. However, there's a significant pause between the 5th and 6th shots, indicating that the sniper deliberately chose the last victim. 2 similar cases have been reported, and in both instances, the 6th victim worked for a company called Samjean Electric. Furthermore, in both cases, the first victim is a loved one of the final victim, suggesting that the sniper ensured the intended target wouldn't leave the scene upon seeing their loved one killed. Through the CCTV footage, Mi-young spots the taxi present at both crime scenes. Wong Cheol tails the car, and when it stops at an intersection, he apprehends the perpetrator. However, he hears gunshots nearby, revealing that he has caught the wrong guy. The killer has already targeted his next victim. Rushing to the scene, Wong Cheol finds the killer aiming at his final target. Before he can intervene, the sixth victim is shot dead. As the killer prepares to fire again, he utters, "Why did you do that to us?" indicating there is more than one shooter in this mass murder. Wong Cheol chases after the killer but is halted by an injured victim pleading for help. Just then, his boss, Du Guang, arrives and informs Wong Cheol that the deadline to kill Young Moon has passed. Saying this, he takes Wong Cheol to his hideout. Meanwhile, Gu Tak arrives at the crime scene and learns that 5 are injured while 1 is dead. Tae-soo seeks the help of his foster brother, Hyun-woo, to trace the shooting range where a double-barrel gun was stolen. Hyun-woo discloses that he wanted out of the contract killing business, but Jong-suk broke his leg as punishment. It appears Tae-soo also had issues with Jong-suk, as he reveals they made a pact never to meet again, and if they did, one of them would die instantly. After congratulating Hyun-woo on his new life with his fiancée, Tae-soo departs. On his way to the hideout, he receives a call from Wong Cheol, who shares the killer's last words before the final murder. Unable to pursue the case himself, Wong Cheol urges Tae-soo to apprehend the culprit at any cost. Later, Tae-soo gets approached by a dealer who wants to hire him for a hit job, and the target is Young Moon. Despite the tempting offer of double pay, Tae-soo, who's out of the game, turns it down. When the dealer tries to intervene, Tae-soo swiftly takes down his crew. Unfortunately, the police patrol outside catches him, landing him in jail for the brawl. When Gu Tak visits him, Tae-soo gives him the address where a gun was stolen. Additionally, he shares info from Wong Cheol. For once, Tae-soo and Wong Cheol prioritize saving innocent lives over thinking about reducing their own sentences. With Wong Cheol gone, Gu Tak and Young Moon remain to crack the case. Upon reaching the shooting range, the pair discovers CCTV footage identifying the culprits, Myung Jin and Chung Sik, both ex-workers at Samjin Electric. Young Moon moves fast, raiding Chung Sik's apartment and apprehending him. During interrogation, Chung Sik confesses that Myung Jin orchestrated the killings and forced him into the final shooting. He planned mass murder to obscure any visible motive, believing it would divert suspicion from them, making it harder for the police to catch on. As per their scheme, there's still one target left. With this intel, Gu Tak sets a trap, using the target as bait to lure Myung Jin. The next day, Gu Tak and Young Moon wait in the park where Myung Jin plans to kill the CEO. Just before Myung Jin can act, Young Moon confronts him. Myung Jin attempts to flee, taking a girl hostage, but Young Moon intervenes, engaging him in an emotional conversation. It turns out the company was facing financial trouble due to the CEO's embezzlement. The 6 victims of the second and third shootings were part of the production team and proposed laying off 20 part-time employees to cover the losses. The manager, the victim of the first shooting, carried out this plan. Myung Jin, affected by this decision, lost his job, leading to his inability to afford his wife's medical expenses. Tragically, she passed away, and he had to give up his child for adoption. Young Moon acknowledges Myung Jin's resentment towards his colleagues, understanding his pain. However, he emphasizes that this doesn't justify taking innocent lives, as they were also facing struggles similar to his own. In a moment of vulnerability, Young Moon disarms Myung Jin. Gu Tak, along with Myung and other officers, arrives to apprehend Myung Jin. Additionally, the CEO was arrested for embezzlement. Later, Gu Tak receives a call from prosecutor Jae-won, who requests a meeting. Jae-won is aware of the Special Crime Investigation Unit and expresses interest in joining them. He explains that he wants to ensure that all arrested criminals receive proper punishment, as they ultimately end up in the prosecutor's office. When Gu Tak declines his request to join the team, Jae-won reveals knowledge about the criminals in the Special Investigation Unit and their connections to Gu Tak's past. He advises Gu Tak to reconsider his offer, implying that there may be mutual benefits to their collaboration. Meanwhile, Du Guang once again instructs Wong Cheol to eliminate Young Moon, but Wong Cheol refuses. Despite feeling grateful to his boss for treating him like family and providing the luxurious lifestyle he once desired, he now understands that luxury doesn't necessarily provide a good life. Reflecting on the murders he's carried out, Wong Cheol admits he hasn't slept well in years and desires peace of mind. When he rejects the order to kill Young Moon, Du Guang opts to bury him alive. On the other side, Mi Young locates Wong Cheol's whereabouts thanks to his ankle monitor. The team mobilizes to find their missing member. Meanwhile, Wong Cheol attempts to escape by strangling the driver, but his boss, Du Guang, subdues him with a golf club, rendering him unconscious. Du Guang then transports Wong Cheol to a mountain location, intending to bury him alive. After tossing him into the pit, Du Guang throws his ring inside, symbolizing the end of their brotherhood. As Du Guang's henchmen bury Wong Cheol alive, they are apprehended by Gu Tak, who had tracked the signal of the ankle monitor to the mountain. As Gu Tak interrogates the thug, Wong Cheol miraculously escapes from his grave. He answers a call from Du Guang, who reveals that he intentionally left the soil soft to aid Wong Cheol's escape. Du Guang orchestrated Wong Cheol's supposed death to protect him from the individual who ordered Young Moon's demise, allowing him to go into hiding. Du Guang advises Wong Cheol to continue working for his team and go into hiding if he wants to live. While Du Guang converses with Wong Cheol on the phone, a car pulls up in front of him. After dispatching the driver, assailants ambush Du Guang, subjecting him to torture before rendering him unconscious. Wong Cheol manages to hear Du Guang on the phone. He was telling the assailant that he would pay for backstabbing him. Since Du Guang is like a brother to Wong Cheol, he pleads with Gu Tak to rescue him. The mention of backstabbing suggests a mutiny within Du Guang's organization. The team suspects that one of the underbosses orchestrated the abduction. To identify the culprit, Wong Cheol devises a plan. He sends a message to 10 underbosses, stating that Du Guang has an important announcement to make and that their presence is required. When everyone gathers at Du Guang's residence, Wong Cheol enters and explains that Du Guang couldn't make it due to personal matters, so he'll be hosting the lunch instead. Wong Cheol's real intention is to observe who attends without their right-hand man. The logic is that whoever abducted Du Guang must have had their right-hand man carry out the task, and that individual would likely be guarding Du Guang in his absence. This strategy aims to narrow down the suspects. Using this method, Wong Cheol eliminates 4 underbosses from suspicion. The remaining ones are either new recruits or not acting as right-hand men. Wong Cheol then employs another tactic. He informs the underbosses that Du Guang has ordered a 30% increase in taxes. This news infuriates the underbosses, who believe it to be a directive from Du Guang himself. However, one underboss, Sun Moon Ki, remains composed, as he knows Du Guang wouldn't issue such an order. Observing Moon Ki's smirk, Wong Cheol deduces him to be the culprit. Upon identifying Moon Ki as the perpetrator, Gu Tak intercepts his phone conversation, overhearing him mention taking Du Guang to a warehouse. This information provides a lead for their rescue mission. The crazy dogs quickly reach the warehouse, only to find Du Guang missing. Shortly after, they are confronted by thugs sent by Moon Ki's right-hand man, Dong Sik. Unbeknownst to Moon Ki, Dong Sik harbors plans to eliminate him and seize control of the organization. Mistaking the crazy dogs for allies of Moon Ki, Dong Sik's thugs initiate a fight. However, our heroes showcase their impressive combat abilities and successfully defeat each opponent. During the scuffle, Tae-soo's phone gets damaged. Wong Cheol answers a call on one of the thugs' phones and informs Dong Sik that his men have been defeated, thwarting his plans to seize control of Seoul. Enraged, Dong Sik smashes his phone and decides to bury Du Guang before fleeing the country. Meanwhile, Du Guang regains consciousness and discovers his driver's phone in the trunk, which he had previously stashed in his pocket. He contacts Gu Tak on his private number, urgently seeking assistance. Gu Tak locates Du Guang's whereabouts, but the road is filled with numerous black cars, making it difficult for him to identify Dong Sik's vehicle. Following Gu Tak's instructions, Du Guang breaks one of the taillights, enabling Gu Tak and Wong Cheol to spot the car. Wong Cheol initiates a pursuit, but Dong Sik escapes by causing a traffic jam at the intersection. Spotting a nearby bike, Young Moon swiftly hops on and gives chase, eventually causing Dong Sik's car to crash. Young Moon successfully rescues Du Guang, who immediately recognizes him as the serial killer he was tasked to eliminate. Seizing the opportunity, Du Guang grabs a knife from the car and slashes Young Moon's arm. Before he can inflict further harm, Wong Cheol intervenes and prevents Du Guang from continuing. Du Guang laments that none of this would have occurred if Young Moon had been eliminated as planned by Wong Cheol. Despite opting against killing Young Moon, Du Guang warns Wong Cheol to watch his back. implying that danger will always lurk behind him. After the case concludes, the crazy dogs are sent back to prison. One day, Mi-young approaches Tae-soo and informs him that they have located Jang-dae. Tae-soo is prepared to confront him for neglecting to send money to Sun-young. However, he is devastated to learn that Jang-dae has been murdered. Overwhelmed with grief, he breaks down in tears at seeing his body. Gu-tak informs Tae-soo that authorities have discovered the murder weapon at the scene, which means they'll apprehend the culprit soon. However, Tae-soo doubts the ease of catching the murderer. Observing how the killer expertly targeted Jang-dae's arteries to maximize blood loss without leaving evidence, Tae-soo concludes that the perpetrator is a professional who leaves no traces behind. Forensic results confirm Tae-soo's suspicions. The murderer is revealed to be none other than his foster brother, Hyun-woo. However, the situation takes a bizarre turn when the team arrives at Hyun-woo's house following news of his suicide. Tae-soo expresses disbelief in Hyun-woo being Jang-dae's killer, citing Hyun-woo's lack of proficiency with a knife. The precision of Jang-dae's murder suggests the work of a skilled knife man, which Tae-soo believes Hyun-woo is not. Gu-tak notices Tae-soo's suspicions and inquires about them, but Tae-soo urges him to steer clear of the case. He warns Gu-tak that his involvement will bring more than just knife stabbings, revealing that there might be grave dangers ahead. Conducting his own investigation, Tae-soo approaches a man responsible for organizing murder contracts and contacting dealers to hire hitmen. Recalling Hyun-woo's warning to steer clear of Jong-suk, Tae-soo suspects him of involvement in the murders. However, the man claims that he doesn't know about the hitman, as he has enlisted a dealer named Dong-sik to hire the right person for the job. Armed with this information, Tae-soo tracks down Dong-sik at a club. To Tae-soo's surprise, Dong-sik is the same individual who previously approached him to carry out Young-moon's murder. In a tense confrontation, Tae-soo interrogates Dong-sik in his room, resorting to torture to extract information. He demands to know the connection between Young-moon's case, Jang-dae's death, and Hyun-woo's demise. Dong-sik discloses that he was ordered to hire Tae-soo as a hitman for Young-moon's murder. When Tae-soo declined, he enlisted Jong-suk for the job. Dong-sik suspects Jong-suk of Jang-dae's murder, believing his expertise matches the manner of death. Advising Tae-soo to stay clear of the situation, Dong-sik suggests letting Jong-suk kill Young-moon to prevent further bloodshed. As Gu-tak and Mi-young examine Hyun-woo's apartment, they discover blood splatters. It indicates that his death was not by hanging, but a homicide. Meanwhile, Young-moon reviews CCTV footage from Jang-dae's office when a group of thugs storms in to assassinate him. Won Cheol intervenes, thwarting the attack and saving Young-moon once more. Suspecting the thugs were sent by Du Kwang, Won Cheol and Young-moon arrive at his office to inquire about the individual who ordered Young-moon's murder. While Young-moon remains outside, Won Cheol joins Du Kwang in his office and questions him about the client. Du Kwang denies knowledge of the person behind the order. Furthermore, Du Kwang asserts that he has terminated the contract, indicating he wasn't behind the earlier attack. It becomes apparent that the assault was a ruse to separate Won Cheol from Young-moon. As Young-moon stands outside, a stranger feigns an accidental encounter, only to stab him in the abdomen. Young-moon, realizing he's bleeding, collapses to the ground. Won Cheol rushes him to the hospital, where his life is saved. Remarkably, the assailant's blade missed Young-moon's lung by a mere 3 centimeters. If it struck its intended target, Young-moon would have perished on the spot. Furthermore, the perpetrator leaves the knife at the scene with Won Cheol's fingerprints on it, implying that if Young-moon had perished, Won Cheol would have been arrested for his murder. Tae-soo brings Gu-tak to Dong-sik's apartment in search of more information, only to discover Dong-sik dead from a drug overdose. It's apparent that the same murderer who killed Hyun-woo staged Dong-sik's death to resemble a self-harm act. Realizing he must confront Jong-suk to end the chaos, Tae-soo deciphers a message on Dong-sik's phone, revealing the location where he can meet Jong-suk. Meeting Jong-suk at the riverside, Tae-soo interrogates him about who wants Young-moon dead. Jong-suk asserts that he merely carries out the tasks and is unaware of the client's identities. When Tae-soo questions him about the motives behind Jang-dae's and Hyun-woo's deaths, Jong-suk realizes that Dong-sik withheld information from him. He regrets that he had to kill Dong-sik without a reason. Jong-suk then discloses that after Tae-soo rejected the contract to kill Young-moon, the client ordered his assassination, for which Jong-suk was hired to carry out the job. As they converse, a thug disguised as a doctor sneaks into Young-moon's room with the intent to kill him. Just as he attempts to inject poison into Young-moon's foredrip, Wong Cheol intervenes, initiating a struggle. Initially, the thug gains the advantage, but soon Wong Cheol turns the tables by delivering relentless punches to the thug's face, eventually gaining control of the situation. In adherence to their pact to eliminate each other whenever they cross paths, Tae-soo and Jang-suk engage in a fierce battle. Both are skilled assassins and appear evenly matched. Jang-suk wields a knife, slicing Tae-soo's arm, but Tae-soo manages to thwart his final assault using a crate. Seizing an opportunity, Tae-soo grabs a sharp wooden shard and strikes Jang-suk under his arms, before delivering a fatal stab to his stomach. As Jang-suk pleads for Tae-soo to end his life, warning that sparing him will only result in more deaths, Tae-soo grapples with his emotions. He hesitates to kill the person he grew up with, having already lost 2 family members. However, faced with Jang-suk's relentless determination, Tae-soo reluctantly accepts that he has no choice but to end Jang-suk's life. After the intense encounter, Tae-soo releases a cathartic scream, unleashing his pent-up anger, frustration, and sorrow over the loss of those he considered family. Later that night, he seeks out Sun Young, who meets him on the street. Sun Young reveals that a social worker visited her recently and informed her about a bank account in her name. The money that Tae-soo ordered Jang Dae to transfer to Sun Young's bank account was indeed coming in monthly, and after 2 years, it has become a huge sum. Due to an outdated address, Sun Young never received the bank's notifications about the account. Realizing that Jang Dae never deceived him and faithfully followed his instructions to support Sun Young, Tae-soo is overwhelmed with emotions. That night, he breaks down in tears, confronted by the same pain and suffering he once inflicted upon the families of all the victims he's killed. As Young Moon awakens, he recalls how he paid a private detective to find a person whom he hired 2 years ago to tail on him. Determined to uncover the truth, Young Moon swiftly changes clothes and heads to the man's residence. When inquired about the evidence, the man confirms Young Moon's worst fears. He is indeed the serial killer responsible for the deaths of all those women. As instructed, the private detective surveilled Young Moon and observed him leaving his residence every Tuesday, followed by picking up his target. He trailed the target to her home, and precisely an hour later, he would leave her house. Without exception, every person Young Moon followed ended up dead. Furthermore, the detective reveals that Young Moon's final victim was the daughter of a lead detective, and after her murder, Young Moon confessed to him. Gu Tak, who had trailed Young Moon from the hospital, overhears all of this. It is finally revealed that Young Moon is the one who murdered Gu Tak's daughter, and Gu Tak has been aware of it all along. Consumed by a desire for personal vengeance, Gu Tak intended to exact retribution with his own hands. However, Young Moon's claim of not remembering committing any murders left Gu Tak in a dilemma. He released Young Moon from jail to closely monitor him and ascertain the truth. Upon overhearing the conversation between Young Moon and the detective, Gu Tak becomes convinced of Young Moon's guilt. Driven by desperation for justice, he prepares to confront Young Moon and end his life. Yet, before he can act, Mi Young arrives with her guards to take Young Moon back to the hospital. On the other hand, Prosecutor Jae-won has joined the Special Crime Investigation Unit, taking on the role of prosecuting the cases solved by Gu Tak's team. He confides in Mi Young, revealing that he was the lead prosecutor on Young Moon's case. Before the series of serial murders, Young Moon had killed 2 burglars who had murdered his parents during a robbery. This traumatic incident awakened a dormant psychopathic side within him. Initially, the detectives believed it was an act of self-defense until they discovered the crime scene where the burglars had been brutally murdered. Due to the results of his psychiatric evaluation showing him to be a psychopath, Jae-won rejected the warrant and released Young Moon, believing he needed psychiatric treatment. However, when Young Moon subsequently began committing serial murders, Jae-won felt a profound sense of guilt and responsibility. He ultimately resigned from his position as a prosecutor, holding himself accountable for releasing Young Moon. Jae-won confides in Mi Young, explaining that he has joined the team because he cannot afford to make the same mistake again. On the other hand, Gu Tak confronts Young Moon in the hospital room, brandishing a gun with the intent to kill him. This is when Young Moon realizes that the lead detective whose daughter he murdered is none other than Gu Tak himself. Facing this truth, Young Moon offers Gu Tak 2 choices: either assist him in uncovering the truth or pull the trigger and end his life. After much deliberation, Gu Tak chooses to give Young Moon a second chance. Without delay, Gu Tak and Young Moon start their investigation. Following leads, they arrive at the residence of a psychiatric doctor, Mr. Kim Dong-ho, who previously treated Young Moon. Meanwhile, the serial killer responsible for the death of Commissioner Gu Hyun's son is found dead in his cell from an apparent suicide. Upon examining the body, Mi Young suspects foul play, citing the direction of the rope used in the strangulation. Mi Young requests an autopsy to confirm her suspicions, but the prosecutor overseeing the case refuses, saying that he has orders from higher authorities to cremate the body. Jae-won subtly plants seeds of doubt in her mind regarding Commissioner Gu Hyun, revealing that he was the last person to visit the serial killer before his demise. When Mi Young presses for details, Commissioner Gu Hyun admits to killing the serial killer. He justifies his actions by claiming the man showed no remorse for his crimes and even threatened to kill him upon release from jail. Mi Young questions the commissioner about why he selected her to lead the Special Crime Investigation Unit. In response, Commissioner Gu Hyun praises Mi Young's intelligence and ambition, but he also highlights her tendency to remain in her own bubble. He suggests that individuals like her, who are accustomed to a world where everything is within their reach, are disconnected from the realities faced by ordinary people. Furthermore, individuals like her don't prioritize others because they're too focused on chasing their own ambitions. They overlook the wants and needs of others. These harsh words from her senior deeply wounded Mi Young. Consequently, she resolves to team up with Jae-won. Previously, Jae-won had approached her and disclosed his intention to join the team to dismantle it. He proposed to assist Mi Young in achieving her objectives, offering himself as her key to success in return. On the other hand, Gu Tak and Young Moon locate Dr. Dong Ho at his residence. Upon spotting Young Moon, Dr. Dong Ho attempts to flee, but Gu Tak apprehends him. Knowing that how Gu Tak has been trying to kill him because of his blame game, Young Moon decides not to trust him anymore. Determined to unveil the truth independently, he employs a stun gun to incapacitate Gu Tak. After leaving Gu Tak behind, Young Moon places the doctor in a vehicle, only to discover that he has been injected with a sedative. He then succumbs to unconsciousness, allowing Dr. Dong Ho to abduct him. Meanwhile, Gu Tak struggles to control his anger over Young Moon's betrayal. He storms back to the church, overturning everything in a bid to release his frustration. Shortly afterwards, Mi Young confronts him, having been informed by Jae-won about the intertwining past of Gu Tak, Tae-soo, Wong Cheol, and Young Moon. Aware of Young Moon being responsible for his daughter's death, she accuses Gu Tak of hiring Du Gwang and Du Sik to assassinate Young Moon. With a smile, Gu Tak acknowledges the accusations. It began 2 years ago. Gu Tak was an upright police officer who never accepted bribes. During that period, he was being interviewed about the serial murder case he was investigating. Following the death of the 14th girl, the police discovered that her body had been wiped down with alcohol to erase any DNA evidence of the killer. Gu Tak instructed his colleague to conduct a chemical composition analysis of the substance used. Alongside his work on the case, Gu Tak enjoyed a contented life with his obedient daughter, Ji-yeon, who had the potential to become the world's finest pianist one day. Due to her exceptional talent, Ji-yeon's teacher suggested to Gu Tak that she should be sent abroad, as her abilities surpassed what Korea could offer. Ji-yeon caught wind of the discussion but remained silent, aware that her father couldn't afford such an opportunity. When questioned about her lack of complaints regarding allowances or overseas education, Ji-yeon explained that she understood her father was already weighed down by mortgage and living expenses, and she didn't want to add to his burdens. In the meantime, Wong Cheol swiftly gained control of Seoul within 25 days. His boss, Du Kwang, contacted Gu Tak and attempted to bribe him with 50 million won. He knew that he needed Gu Tak's cooperation to conduct his business in Seoul. Gu Tak chuckled and promptly punched Du Kwang in the face for making such an offer. A few days later, Gu Tak received a distressing call from the hospital. It turned out that Ji-yeon wanted to earn money, so she took a job at a karaoke lounge without understanding its nature. Upon arrival, when she discovered they were seeking a hostess, she attempted to leave. However, she got into an altercation with one of the customers, who proceeded to assault her. Consumed by rage, Gu Tak tracks down the assailant at the police station and mercilessly beats him for laying a hand on his daughter. This incident prompts Ji-yeon to realize that she should only aspire for things within their means. Witnessing his daughter abandon her dream, Gu Tak breaks down and decides to accept a bribe from Du Kwang in exchange for turning a blind eye to his crimes. However, he sets one condition: Du Kwang must surrender Wong Cheol, his chief enforcer responsible for the takeover operation. Du Kwang was initially reluctant because he had a brotherly bond with Wong Cheol, but eventually yielded to Gu Tak's persistent demand. Consequently, Du Quang handed over Wong Cheol to the authorities, securing permission to conduct illegal business in Seoul. Meanwhile, the chemical analysis unveiled that the killer had utilized white kerosene oil to wipe down any DNA evidence from his victims. Gu Tak and his team meticulously reviewed security footage from all the gas stations in the vicinity, compiling a list of individuals who purchased white kerosene. Subsequently, they scrutinized security footage from the 14 crime scenes to identify any matches from their list. After a month of diligent investigation, they succeeded in pinpointing a person of interest. To capture the suspect, Gu Tak conducted a raid on his residence without a warrant. As it turned out, the suspect was none other than Young Moon. During interrogation, Young Moon disclosed that his girlfriend, an art major, required kerosene oil for cleaning oil paint brushes. When questioned about his presence at the crime scenes, Young Moon claimed that he didn't remember. Failing to get a confession from Young Moon, Gu Tak resorted to torture in an attempt to force him to speak. Nevertheless, Young Moon steadfastly denied any connection to the recent string of murders. Even when subjected to a lie detector test, every time he was shown a photo of a victim, he claimed he didn't kill her, which turned out to be a truth in a lie detector. On that day, Ji-yeon visited the police station to spend time with her father before departing abroad. As they were leaving, Young Moon encountered Ji-yeon and complimented her beauty before giving her a smirk. Although Gu Tak found this behavior infuriating, he chose to overlook it. The next day, Gu Tak waited for his daughter at the dinner table. Just as he was about to sit down, he received a call from the prosecutor, Jae-won, with whom he had been in contact regarding Young Moon's case. Given the urgency of the meeting, Gu Tak had to attend. When Ji-yeon returned home, she discovered that her father had prepared a meal for her for the first time. Before she could take a bite, she heard the sound of the door unlocking. When she got up to investigate the noise, she was suddenly grabbed from behind and fatally stabbed. That evening, when Gu Tak returned home, he found his daughter's lifeless body outside the house. Devastated by his daughter's murder, Gu Tak resolved to avenge her by killing her murderer with his own hands. Acting impulsively, he went straight to Young Moon's apartment with the intent to end his life. However, an officer who had been monitoring Young Moon arrived in the nick of time and prevented Gu Tak from committing the act. Nonetheless, due to his reckless actions, Gu Tak was suspended from duty. During his suspension, Gu Tak became even more determined to apprehend his daughter's killer. He approached Young Moon's girlfriend, Eugene, who worked at a bar to make ends meet. He offered her 50 million won to pursue her dreams as a painter and requested her assistance in capturing Young Moon. Though hesitant to betray her boyfriend, Eugene couldn't refuse the substantial sum that could change her life. Following Gu Tak's instructions, she pretended to be a survivor of Young Moon's attack. Gu Tak managed to gather hard evidence, including items with Young Moon's fingerprints, solidifying his case. Consequently, Young Moon was arrested and charged. Eugene's testimony in court further strengthened the case, leading to Young Moon being sentenced to life imprisonment. Following Young Moon's imprisonment, Gu Tak approached a dealer and tasked him with arranging Young Moon's assassination in prison. The dealer assigned the job to Tae-soo, who happened to be in the same penitentiary as Young Moon. However, Tae-soo, having abandoned his criminal past after surrendering himself, found himself unable to carry out the deed. Returning to the present, Young Moon awakens only to be forcibly administered some pills by the doctor, causing him to lose consciousness once more. Meanwhile, Gu Tak concludes recounting his story to Mi-young. While he admits to instructing Tae-soo to eliminate Young Moon 2 years prior, he vehemently denies the accusations that he released Wong Cheol and Tae-soo with the intention of having Young Moon killed. When Mi-young presses him on why he released Young Moon, Gu Tak reveals that his motive was to uncover the truth by closely observing Young Moon's actions. One day, he pondered why he had arrested Young Moon solely based on CCTV footage and the presence of kerosene oil in his apartment. This realization led him to question whether he had acted hastily in determining Young Moon's guilt. Consequently, he visited Young Moon thereafter but struggled to muster the courage to apologize. Throughout his tenure in the Special Crime Investigation Unit, Gu Tak witnessed numerous instances that cast doubt on Young Moon's criminal nature. However, his recent interaction with Young Moon reinforced his belief that he had been foolish to place trust in him. After Young Moon's betrayal, Gu Tak realized that he was indeed Ji-yeon's killer. Now, he is determined to kill Young Moon with his own hands. However, as he prepares to depart, Mi-young takes out a recorder, revealing that she has captured his confession regarding framing Young Moon 2 years prior. Police officers stationed outside promptly enter the church to apprehend Gu Tak. Staring at Mi-young in disbelief, Gu Tak lashes out, condemning her as a low life. He initially pretends to surrender, but then he swiftly subdues the officers, prompting Mi-young to aim her gun at him. Defiant, Gu-tak informs Mi-young that he will kill Young-moon and then he will turn himself in. The following day presents another complication for Young-moon, as Du Kwang is discovered dead in his office. Young-moon's fingerprints are found all over the weapon and the crime scene, solidifying his involvement in the murder. While explaining the situation to Wong Cheol, Jae-won reveals the existence of CCTV footage capturing Young-moon entering Du Kwang's building. With the evidence pointing directly at Young-moon, Wong Cheol becomes convinced of his guilt. However, their anger escalates when Jae-won discloses that Gu-tak was the one who orchestrated Du Kwang and Dong-sik's plot to hire them to kill Young-moon. Tae-soo, driven by the loss of his family due to this case, swears to exact revenge on Gu-tak for their deaths. In his quest to locate Gu-tak, Tae-soo enlists the assistance of the dealer. At first, the old man refuses to help, saying that he is too picky with the bugging cases. However, Tae-soo persuades him by emphasizing that he lost his family because of Gu-tak, and that he must locate him at any cost. Meanwhile, Wong Cheol assembles all the underbosses and their henchmen. He instructs them to locate Young-moon, asserting that he is responsible for Du Kwang's murder. Meanwhile, Young-moon regains consciousness only to discover his hands covered in blood. He has no memory of what transpired, likely due to the pills administered by the doctor. Before he can react, Dr. Dong-ho enters the warehouse and proceeds to electrocute him, so that Young-moon can never come for him again. Dong-ho calls some men and sends him away with them. As Young-moon's vehicle passes through an intersection, Wong Cheol's men catch sight of him inside and attempt to intercept the car, but their efforts prove futile. Seizing the opportunity amidst the chaos, Young-moon electrocutes the thugs, causing the car to crash. Wong Cheol's thugs quickly inform him of Young-moon's location. Attempting to evade capture, Young-moon seeks refuge in a hotel room arranged by Dong-ho's associates. However, Wong Cheol's thugs track him down. Thinking fast, Young-moon pours water onto the floor, and as the thugs step on it, he tosses a lamp onto the water, electrocuting them. Upon arriving at the hotel, Wong Cheol discovers his men injured and Young-moon nowhere to be seen. On the flip side, Gu-tak contacts his former colleague and friend, only to discover that the prosecutors are on his trail. Desperate, he approaches Young-moon's girlfriend, Yoon-jin, and coerces her into calling Young-moon. Meanwhile, Mi-young and Jae-won meet the commissioner and advise him to disband the team. Considering Gu-tak's fugitive status, Young-moon's recent involvement in a killing, and the ongoing pursuit of both individuals by Tae-soo and Wong Cheol, disbanding the team would allow the commissioner to extricate himself from the escalating interrogation by his superiors, potentially by pinning the blame on Gu-tak. However, the commissioner opts to remain loyal to his friend. In the midst of the chaos, Young-moon falls into the trap and arrives at Yoon-jin's residence, only to be confronted by Gu-tak. With the intent to kill Young-moon, Gu-tak aims his gun at him. However, before he can act, Wong Cheol intervenes. Seizing Young-moon, Wong Cheol takes control, while Tae-soo arrives on the scene, driven by his desire for revenge against Gu-tak. Both men engage in a brutal altercation, relentlessly questioning their adversaries about their motives. Young-moon maintains that he has no recollection of killing Du Kwang, while Gu-tak adamantly denies ordering Young-moon's assassination. Eventually, both Young-moon and Gu-tak grow weary of offering explanations amidst the escalating violence. Now, they just want Wong Cheol and Tae-soo to stop suffering. Wong Cheol and Tae-soo gear up for an attack, but they can't bring themselves to harm their teammates. Spending time together solving cases made them know each other well, which is why they still trust each other. In the end, they all agree to team up and uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Jae-won meets Commissioner Gu-hyun and shares how a serial killer murdered his wife 4 years ago. After losing his wife, he fell apart. Eventually, he decided to check on his wife's killer. To his surprise, the man was laughing and living happily despite taking 8 lives. That's when Jae-won resolved to seek revenge. The killer deeply cared for his wife, so Jae-won murdered her. When he visited the killer again, he was glad to find him emotionally distraught. The killer even attempted to slit his own wrist to end his life. This experience taught Jae-won that sending criminals to prison isn't true punishment, but causing them to endure the same pain by taking away their loved ones is. When Commissioner Gu-hyun asks why Jae-won is sharing this story, Jae-won reveals his intention to kill him, so Gu-hyun needs to know why he is getting killed. He believes Gu-hyun is like family to those in the Special Crime Investigation Unit, and without him, they'll be in trouble. As Gu-hyun stands up, Shocked and furious, Jae-won stabs him multiple times and then flees. Injured, Gu-hyun contacts Gu-tak but doesn't disclose his location or condition. After hearing Jae-won's story, Gu-hyun realized he was no different from Jae-won because both used violence to combat violence. Before passing away, he advises Gu-tak not to die like a beast but to die as a human. Hearing the pain in his voice, Gu-tak immediately realizes that Gu-hyun is injured. He keeps asking the commissioner about his whereabouts, but Gu-hyun chooses not to reveal it, believing that dying like a beast should end with him. After Gu-hyun passes away, Gu-tak seeks the help of his former colleague to trace his cell phone. Soon, he arrives at the location only to find Gu-hyun dead. Just then, Jae-won arrives with his men and accuses the crazy dogs of killing Commissioner Gu-hyun. Upon seeing a cut on Jae-won's hand, Gu-tak immediately realizes that he is the one who killed the commissioner. This is because when someone stabs a person with too much force, the blade digs into their hand, resulting in a cut like this. Jae-won smiles at Gu-tak and instructs his men to arrest both Gu-tak and the crazy dogs. A fight breaks out between the two groups, but Gu-tak and his team find themselves outnumbered. Despite the odds, they successfully escape in one of the available cars. Meanwhile, Mi-young is shattered by Commissioner Hu Jae-eun's death. Jae-won informs her that Gu-tak is the culprit and assures her they'll soon capture him and his associates. To achieve this, he publicly announces the investigation, fabricating a narrative that blames Gu-tak and the crazy dogs for the commissioner's murder. He tells the police that Gu-tak freed convicted killers from prison, and when the commissioner discovered this, they killed him. After the briefing, he directs the officers to track down the criminals accountable for their commissioner's demise. With flyers plastered everywhere, the team seeks refuge in an abandoned building. There, Tae-soo discovers how Young-moon was abducted by Dr. Dong-ho and given pills that caused him to lose consciousness. Anticipating that the crazy dogs will pursue Dr. Dong-ho to uncover the truth, Jae-won arranges for his security and a heavily guarded house. To draw Dong-ho out, Young-moon requests Mi-young's assistance. Mi-young was somehow convinced that Gu-tak wasn't the killer. It is because she asked Jae-won for the dashcam video, but he said he had already disposed of it, further fueling Mi-young's suspicions. To uncover the truth, she decides to assist the crazy dogs. She cuts off the electricity supply to the house and fires a shot, distracting the thugs from Dong-ho. Then, she calls Dong-ho, posing as Jae-won's accomplice, and tells him that Young-moon is in the building to kill him. She also mentions that there is a mole among the thugs who helped Young-moon enter the building. Advising him not to trust anyone, she instructs Dong-ho to head straight to the underground parking lot, where a gray car awaits him. Dong-ho follows her guidance and reaches the parking lot, only to be confronted by the thugs waiting there. Unable to trust anyone, he heads directly to the van, only to realize he's been deceived by Mi-young. Before he can escape, the crazy dogs abduct him. He's brought to the abandoned building, where Wong Cheol and Tae-soo torture him to extract the truth. It's then that Dong-ho decides to reveal everything. He tells the team that Jae-won was the lead prosecutor in the case of his wife, who was killed by a serial killer 4 years ago. Jae-won captured the killer and ensured his life sentence. However, Dong-ho remained unsatisfied because he couldn't come to terms with his wife's death. One day, Jae-won approached him unexpectedly, mentioning that he had a case involving a suspected psychopath, Young-moon. He sought Dong-ho's assistance related to Young-moon. Subsequently, he brought Young-moon to Dong-ho's clinic, where they administered a pill called Exfolin. It was a tranquilizer, but due to its adverse effects, it was banned. The adverse effects of Exfolin included emotional disorder, memory loss, and parasomnia hypnosis, a sleep disorder that includes a pseudo-hypnotic state. The reason Young-moon couldn't remember whether he killed those people or not was all because of that drug. Every time Young-moon visited Dong-ho's clinic, he was administered Exfolin. When Young-moon entered a hypnotic state, Dong-ho instructed him to memorize details about the targeted women. Both Dong-ho and Jae-won believed Young-moon would carry out the killings, but his subconscious resisted. Consequently, Jae-won and his associate, Mr. Cha, committed the murders instead, and framed Young-moon for it. All the victims were relatives of criminals prosecuted by Jae-won during his tenure at the Southern District Prosecutor's Office. He came to realize that the only way to punish them was to make them suffer, as he did. When Gu-tak inquires about the motive behind his daughter's murder, Dong-ho discloses that they needed someone to frame Young-moon once again to evade capture. Aware of Gu-tak's belief that Young-moon was the killer due to his presence near the crime scenes, Jae-won manipulated this to his advantage. They orchestrated Ji-yeon's murder to provoke Gu-tak into a rage, prompting him to arrest Yoon-moon at any cost. Gu-tak unwittingly fell into their trap and apprehended Yoon-moon, just as Jae-won had anticipated. Upon hearing the revelation, Gu-tak realizes that Jae-won ordered Do Kwon and Dong-sik to enlist Tae-soo and Wong Cheol to eliminate Yoon-moon. This was out of fear that Yoon-moon might recall everything and expose Jae-won. Realizing Yoon-moon's innocence, Gu-tak approaches him and offers his apologies for wrongfully framing him for the murders 2 years prior. He extends his revolver to Yoon-moon, granting him an opportunity for retribution. However, Yoon-moon chooses to spare Gu-tak's life, acknowledging that they were both manipulated. Instead, he suggests they work together to apprehend the individual who orchestrated their suffering. They contact Mi-young and disclose everything they've uncovered. Aware that Jae-won may be monitoring their conversation, they arrange to meet Mi-young near the port to hand over Dong-ho. Enraged that his plan has gotten exposed, Jae-won lashes out at Mr. Cha for his failure to protect Dong-ho. Prior to embarking on the mission, Tae-soo chooses to confess to Sun-yoon about murdering her husband. He apologizes and reveals the truth about how he killed her husband, staging it to appear as an accident. Overwhelmed by the confession, Sun-yoon collapses to the ground, overcome with tears. The next day, the team proceeds with their plan. As anticipated, Jae-won falls for the trap and arrives at the port to confront Gu-tak and the crazy dogs. Gu-tak contacts Mi-young, revealing that Dong-ho was aboard one of the ships with Tae-soo and Wong Cheol. Jae-won overhears the conversation and dispatches his men to the ship to eliminate them all. However, since it was part of their strategy, Tae-soo and Wong Cheol were already anticipating the arrival of the thugs and were prepared for the confrontation. A fierce brawl breaks out between them, and with their exceptional combat skills, the duo swiftly overpower all the men in their path. Eventually, Tae-soo confronts Mr. Cha in a brutal fight, leaving him battered and bloody, with broken bones and bleeding from the mouth. Meanwhile, Wong Cheol finds himself outnumbered initially, but Tae-soo quickly joins him, and together they repel the onslaught of thugs. Meanwhile, Jae-won spots Yoon-moon, transferring Dong-ho to another ship, so he pursues them. Recklessly, he fires shots at them, showing no concern for his accomplice, Dong-ho. Eventually, he joins the duo in a ship compartment, where Yoon-moon is visibly injured. Determined to silence Dong-ho and prevent him from testifying against him, Jae-won decides to kill him. However, before he can carry out his plan, Yoon-moon confronts Jae-won for his actions, declaring that he cannot justify the crimes he has committed. Amid their conversation, Jae-won confesses to all the murders and shamelessly justifies his actions. Suddenly, the person behind him removes his hood, revealing himself as Gu-tak. It was all part of their plan. Gu-tak is unable to contain his emotions upon seeing his daughter's murderer. He brutally beats Jae-won until Yoon-moon intervenes, advising Gu-tak to hand Jae-won over to the authorities. Unbeknownst to Jae-won, his confession was captured by the CCTV camera in the room. Mi-young watches the footage and promptly arrests Jae-won for the serial murders committed 2 years ago. Later, Mi-young informs Gu-tak that the crazy dogs won't receive reduced sentences because the commissioner, who was the sole authority aware of the Special Crime Investigation Unit, has passed away. Additionally, due to the incident 2 years ago, Gu-tak himself will face consequences. Mi-young advises Gu-tak to flee with his teammates to evade their fate. However, Gu-tak responds that they will accept their punishment and spend the rest of their lives seeking redemption and asking for forgiveness. Following the resolution of Jae-won's case, Gu-tak and the crazy dogs turn themselves in, prepared to face their punishment with courage. Some days later, Mi-young updates the police chief that Yoon-moon is undergoing retrial, and depending on the outcome, they will determine whether he should be released. She also reveals that neither the previous serial killer nor Jae-won was responsible for one of the recent victims, which indicates the involvement of another serial killer. When the chief inquires about their next steps, Mi-young proposes forming a team comprising criminals, specifically the crazy dogs, to crack the case. She then visits the penitentiary to inform Gu-tak about their upcoming mission. Gu-tak responds with a smile, ready to tackle the case and apprehend the culprits once and for all.